Okay. I
All
got some
right.
just being
Being
live.
live. Yep.
The other one didn't do that because you remember
No.
when you were always giving me a hard time about that.
Yep. This is a much better platform.
Yeah. But yeah, so there.
Okay. There we are.
Yeah. Okay. You have to dig deep today.
What do you mean, what to dig deep today?
Well, just just the whole thing.
Yep.
The other one didn't do that.
No.
I don't know. I can't even see comments in this thing,
No.
so whatever.
No, and then so when it comes up, you just click on it.
Yeah.
And then go to live chat, and then
Oh, okay.
the comments will come up.
Right, but you're one of those genius people who just seems.
I did pretty well in my technology course.
Anyway, we'll get up here.
Yeah.
A little bit. Get the low
Yep.
Holy.
Hey, Barbara. Hey, Dan. Hey, Caleb.
Hey, what's going on, guys? How are you? But yeah, so this is
our Christmas day.
We could be digging deep today.
I don't think so. We got Stones River. We got General Meade. I got a new Howard button.
You do. You got a
and
Howard.
A George Pickett shirt.
I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to shake.
Jim. Morning, Kevin. Morning, David.
I feel like I've been drinking some of the Camp Lejeune water too much because I'm,
Yeah.
I don't know.
I love your shirt.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that is Ford's Theater. 1-star rating. Awful. Would not recommend.
Where this is Springfield. That'll give a little spook over there in Lincoln, huh?
God.
Anyway.
Hey, Miranda. Good morning.
Hey, so what's going on with you? I know what's going on with you, but how's welcome back to the U.S.
Yes, I'm back into the U.S. of A. After being in Canada for a while. For 3 weeks.
No, it's good. It's good to have.
No, I am glad to be back. Good morning, John.
Yeah, so this is the last day of the year. Last day.
Yes. It's also General Meade's birthday.
It is also the Battle of River, also known as Battle of Murfreesboro, if you are so inclined.
Which is where our friend Jim lives. So that's very cool. I think there's only 30 or 40% of the battlefield preserved, though.
Not much. No, that was a fun episode we did on that one because that was like almost 2 years ago.
It was. Yeah, because we are coming up on episode 98, which is going to be New Year's resolutions of Civil War generals. And then episode 99 is going to be General William Rosecrans, who was the general at Stones River. Yep.
So we're going to finally going to do Rosecrans, which will be fun. That'll get the old Twitter people going.
Oh God. Yeah. Like, cause you want to get them going. You say that he might've had PTSD. And for some reason that offends the Grant people.
Yeah, there's a lot. I don't know. Everybody's offended by something. It's okay. It doesn't.
It's crazy how like bent out of shape people get over an opinion. Like, I mean, there was that one guy that was like, he's like, you don't have evidence that Rosecrans had PTSD. No, I don't need it. It's an opinion.
It's not like you go right, but it's not like you go.
It's like I'm saying, oh, I'm diagnosing him with this. I'm saying like based on the evidence that we have of him. He clearly had lost his fastball by Chickamauga, and here's what was probably happening to him. And that's why Abraham Lincoln's comment is so unfair about him, confused and stunned like a duck head on the head.
Yeah. Well, there's a old.
Jim said 15% of Stones River is preserved.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's too bad. That's a good one too. But no, we're thinking Stones River today, but that was, I guess we probably should have, but that was that's a fun battle. You got Rosecrans, you got a lot of the guys on that.
Sheridan is there, Pat Claiborne is there, which I am.
Alexander McCook, he's come in that right wing, and he had one of the great insulting nicknames of the Civil War when the soldiers called him Gut because he was fat.
Oh God, fat shaming.
They also called him Chucklehead, which is today.
Dan said my historical society has 2 signed telegrams from Rosecrans, one asking about muskets getting rifled and an inquiry about whale guns for troops. And David said no one can convince me he didn't have PTSD, referring to Rosecrans. Yes, he did. Yeah, I completely.
Exactly, a shame. I mean, he sees Garashka's head blown off.
That's Stones River,
but you see him. He's kind of like it's like Rufus Dawes.
Yeah.
Look at Rufus Dawes, 6 Wisconsin guy. Everybody knows who he is.
Yeah.
You see that literally the tread off of his tire going flat as it
Yeah.
went on. When
Yeah.
he's a rah guy at Bronner's Farm or Groveton, which led to the Second Manassas, and by the time he makes it towards the end, he's just not what he was. And you could see that with Rosecrans too.
Yeah, because Rosecrans does, the Grant people for some reason don't like it when I say this, but he does really well with like Tullahoma, and he does, okay with Stones River. And then he's having a hell of a time after, Tullahoma, because of Halleck is effing things up for him, right? And he's like, I need this, I need this, I need this.
Halleck, I
Um
cannot have version cast on him.
God.
No, but this is a lot, and we've talked about this a million times. But it's interesting though, because he does pretty well. And we talked before about Stones River, where he did well, but he was also aided and abetted by one Braxton Bragg, if you remember this episode.
Oh yes, but I mean, I think Thomas is with him too, and that's the other thing.
Thomas was there.
Thomas was there, and that's where you see their friendship, that they were very close. And I think that also was a nail in the coffin for Thomas as well when it came to General Grant, because Grant just didn't like Thomas either. And I think he somehow was like, yeah, you were best friends with Rosecrans, whatever, Caleb said, as a Confederate, I sort of don't mind Rosecrans. Now, Rosecrans is he's a good general. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves at all. And I'm really looking forward to talking about him and talking about his life and stuff, because he had I think he was he had a horrible scar on his face from some acid got in his face or something.
He had a lamp exploded.
Yeah.
And some of the oil, probably whale oil, probably got his face. He was almost like that dude in the movie, but not as bad.
Two-Face.
Kind of how he was. But a lot of these guys, I mean, it's funny, you talk about guys like Gordon, talk about guys like Claiborne. It's like they all got face injuries. It's weird. And obviously, George Sears Green got shot in the face over there at Wauhatchie, survived, but face injuries. But Thomas Crittenden was a Stones River. We talked about him.
Yep.
Leonidas, one of the best names of Crittenden.
Leonidas Polk.
That's back when they had the center, right, and left wings too.
Yep.
And if you remember, this is when Claiborne is going to be driving back Sheridan, Miranda's friend there, and they're going to be pushed right back to the railroad hub. So it creates a way to escape and create supplies, where if they drove them and separated from the railroad hub, it could have been a different story. And of course, that ultimately leads to Tullahoma, which is going to create the opportunity to push him deeper and deeper into Georgia. That's why Stones River is important. If Stones River falls to the Confederacy, Nashville is going to be threatened. It could really affect everything, because really Atlanta, I think we've talked about it, is probably that decisive moment that helps seal Lincoln's election for the most part. And we were talking about how the whole thing is running that clock out in that election. Stones River doesn't happen. Atlanta doesn't happen on that time.
No, it doesn't. It screws up the whole time frame of the Civil War, because I mean, Claiborne was pretty close on that Nashville road, and he was fighting Sheridan, and it was you had the two most talented men in either army fighting against each other. And I mean, I think Claiborne came pretty close, but he couldn't get, again, it goes back to reinforcements, right? Jim said, I've always thought about going to the Avenue Shopping Center and Medical Center Parkway here in Murfreesboro and offer strangers out shopping a battlefield tour. I could take them to Michael's and point out that so-and-so died a bloody death right here on this spot.
Well, that's a shit. That shows, the Michael's of the frame place. I was actually at Michael's recently, not far from where I live. No, but that's the shame of these whole things too, is a lot of these battlefields are going and going. Obviously Franklin, that neck of the woods, sort of is just the same thing. Not every place is Antietam, not every place is
or Chickamauga, or Ben's on here. He said his name is Glow Jam. Then there's another Ben on here. Ben is one of our new listeners as well. Caleb said Tullahoma was his greatest moment for sure. Hey Beth. And Caleb said, remember Lincoln was happy about the Stones River outcome and saw it as a victory. Grant said if we'd have had another such victory, it would have destroyed us, or something along those lines. Yeah, there was the day, April 14th, when Grant is meeting with Lincoln in his office, and Lincoln was talking about the dream, and he's like, oh, and I had it before the victory at Stones River. And Grant was like, Stones River was not a victory. Like, the fuck, dude? Get over it.
Well, that's the eye of the beholder type thing, and I mean, obviously, it was a victory, and I
Mhm.
can sort of see his ripping on Hooker a little bit for Lookout Mountain, the romance thing, because Missionary Ridge is where the rubber hit the road
I
for
know, but still, like, I see Lookout Mountain as this, like, you see the American flag finally planted on that mountain after it's been occupied by Confederates for, a couple of months. That is like, for morale in the Union troops, that's a lot to see that flag there,
and they captured the Starbucks up there,
Yeah,
so
they did.
that should be a reward as
Isn't
it
that
is.
where the Sky Barn was?
Eyebrows up there, yeah, and
Sorry.
but no, but certainly, the romance of it and all that. But I think
Yeah.
Grant's totally wrong on Stones River, and that goes again. It goes back to the Battle of Iuka with them too, with Rosecrans and
Yeah.
Grant, and that's what though, old Rosie here, Mary. I know you like your Rosecrans,
I do.
but again, he's
Not very nice to Grant.
just going behind Grant's back to
Mhm.
that newspaper reporter.
Yep.
And I mean, think about it. If you're gonna go behind the back and trash the big boss,
Yeah.
don't go to your buddy who everyone knows your buddy. Find
Yeah.
someone and be smart about it. That's why
Exactly.
media, that's why he
Yeah.
hates them.
Oh, I know. He's like Sherman in that regard. Good
But,
morning, Tony.
hey,
Caleb said maybe it was a Catholic thing with Rosecrans too.
yeah, well, there was there's a lot of that, and that's some stuff we talked about, the Catholic thing, the Irish thing. There's a lot of things that we look at nowadays and think that's, well, whatever.
Yeah.
Those are deals back then, especially the
Oh,
Irish.
Yeah.
They're still, talking about
I'm
that.
the proud owner of some new Patrick Clayburn stuff as well, which is
Yeah, you did good, Senator.
Yeah.
But still, it's when you talk about people like that, there's a lot that goes into it. And one thing we don't talk a lot about, we haven't yet, is the post-war stuff.
Yeah.
And not just with Grant. I mean, Grant's a guy, two-term guy. There was talk he was going to run for a third term.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of stuff with that. But the Reconstruction with those 5 military districts and the stuff the South had to do to get back into the Union, it's you have a military guy as president. You've got military district. You got guys like George, Meade is in charge of Georgia for the most part. So you can sort of see, the animosity and all that stuff going with that, and so you can see the politics through the war. But once you get afterwards, you basically have a military-run South, all because of that 14th Amendment. And ironically, one of the guys who was tried to be the voice of reason was John Brown Gordon when he was a senator. And they tried to get him. They speaking of the media tried to fake a story that Gordon was supporting Grant in his third term election, 1870.
Wow.
And he's like, I'm not supporting Grant. I want a reconstructed country, but I want myself representation. But I can't support Grant. I got good terms from him in Appomattox and all that stuff, but I'm not going to support a Democrat because I'm a Republican. I want, and a lot of, speaking of Gordon, a lot of Gordon's Senate stuff was really important for that, a lot of the Reconstruction too, because then it was the North just pigpiling on the South politically, trash them in Congress, and there was no voice in the South to really defend themselves. And it was Gordon, January 75, right around there was when he kind of took over, and had that couple of year really good run in the Senate, and he became kind of that Southern spokesman.
Yeah.
And
for him to become that is really something. I mean, he's still, Gordon is a lot of things. He's he's very Southern, and
Gordon was taking money. He wanted the North and South to be back to unified again. But very much wanted the South. He wanted home rule. He wanted the South to rule the South, the states to run the states. He did. He didn't want the carpetbaggers and the scalawags from the North to come down and rile up the Black population, which is what they were trying to do. Gordon was very much wanted the races to be together, but the Black population to know they were secondary. That's what he wanted. And that's him. And he had the Klan thing where he denied that. He got his ass hauled in front of a committee and said, "I'm not a member of the Klan, but I am a member of a private group of concerned white citizens." And
well, dude, we're going to be doing an episode on Gordon probably in February as well.
But he was somebody who, unlike Longstreet, unlike Mosby, didn't go all in as far as, supporting guys like Grant and
Yeah.
supporting the Republicans and things like that. He was very much wanted a reconstruction, but he didn't want to get bent over the table, which is what was happening.
Yeah.
And that was, and so we'll do a thing on post reconstruction. It's not the most
Yeah.
exciting subject in the world compared to battles and people like that, but it's important because you see the ramifications that still go today, and that's
Yep. Oh, big time. Yeah. And I'm reading a book right now called Yankee Stepfather, which is shockingly, it's about Oliver Otis Howard in his time in the Freedmen's Bureau, and how, just kind of like, from day one, it was messed up. Like it talks about, starts at the Grand Review, and how Howard was like kind of dreading this new role because he knew, because of President Johnson, it was not going to go well. And I mean, Howard is the one that has to go tell all these freedmen that, yeah, remember we promised you 40 acres and a mule? You're not getting it now. And and I get the feeling just from what the author said that the book is not going to be very favorable on Howard. So, but I'm still enjoying it, but like Kevin Howard drink. Good morning, Rob.
you remember when we did the thing with Heckman in Gettysburg?
Yeah.
I forgot about that one, where everybody who Howard's name came up, everybody did a drink. That was fun. That was a good time we did.
It was. No, that was great of John to have us on there. And speaking of John, he's doing a live stream tonight too, I think, on the top 3 Civil War reports I think he's doing that with, oh gosh, I can't remember who he is now, but yeah.
New Year's Eve live stream. Wow, that's.
Yep. John said your post-war Lee episode is great. Could do that for a lot of guys. Always interesting.
Hey, John.
Hi. Caleb mentions he's going to Barnes and Noble to go shopping, and I think they do have a decent Civil War section, actually.
No, I'm glad John mentioned this, the Lee thing. It's kind of funny. Everybody just calls him Gentilly. Did you notice that?
Yeah. We all just call him Gentilly.
So, but anyways, John. But the Lee thing is a perfect example we just talked about. Is that not a lot of people spend a lot of time, especially writing, or even reading for that matter, about the post-war stuff. And Lee is an interesting one.
Yeah.
And the thing about Lee, so you can say this for anybody, is anytime you have a polarizing subject, a guy like Bobby Lee, they're the people who say, traitor, right?
Yeah.
They're people who put him up there with, with all the greats, Tom Brady, Chanel, all of them. And the truth is going to be somewhere right in the middle as always. But I think people realize the pressure that he was under to be that go-to person.
Yeah.
Do you realize if he had the attitude of a Jubal Early or people like one of those guys, how divisive he could have been when people come like Beauregard, all these guys coming up to him saying, what the hell should I take off and go to Spain or wherever? No, stay in the country. And he doesn't get enough credit for that. And it's look, he went against his army after war started and all that stuff. And that's all true. It's all 100% true. But at the same time, he did in his mind what he was going to do to help reconcile the country when he absolutely did not have to. And that was something he doesn't get enough credit for. And the people who like to rip on Lee, and there are a lot of them, don't really understand that. And when you study his post-war, you can come away with the fact that he did something that what he felt was right. He felt that he did his fight. They didn't win. Time to move on, and that's it. When he could have literally, forget the fact he could have gone to the mountains with E.P. Alexander. After Appomattox, he could have been someone who just didn't, went after Grant. He could have gone after Sherman. He could have done all these things, and he was always publicly and privately, a voice of reason in the South, and that's a big thing. I think people. I wish people would. I wish people would kind of remember that a little bit when you're talking about him. That's all. But I'm glad we did it. I wanted to do that one for a while. Anytime you do post stuff, it's a little bit off the beaten path, but I think it's important. I think it's fun, to personify these people and tell some of the Lee stories that sometimes people don't really study on. And the fact that the dude had a sense of humor and he laughed and laughed all the time.
Yeah, and people don't think he did. And the thing that I realized doing it is like I kind of think it's, and he only lives 5 years after the war. And I think if he had lived another 5 or 10 years, it might be a different country. Who knows, right? Because of the impact he had,
Yeah. Well, I mean, all these guys had impact. I mean,
Mhm.
and when you've got people coming at him, I mean, you think about the fact that Jubal Early, he gets fired. He gets the old heave ho from
Yeah.
Lee. And he's a guy who, he framed his firing letter
Yep.
and put it on his wall, and that was his pride and joy to show the letter he got fired from. Not a lot of people would do that. And Robert E. Lee would do things. There was other stories we just didn't talk about.
Yeah.
The really good story. Well, he was at a resort. He took a vacation, 1868, right around there. It was when he was teaching, or was at Washington College, where he goes down there, and there's this girl, this teenage girl who
Yeah.
is kind of like being shunned by a lot of the local, because her father was a unionist, supported the union. This is West Virginia now. This is not deep south. And what does Lee do? There's a dance going on, and no one's dancing her because it's like publicly being ostracized if you do. You know what Lee does? He walks up and dance. And so now she's dancing with Robert E. Lee. So guess what happens? Now everybody wants to know her now. So she like lifted her out of this social chasm. I think he did, and he knew what he was doing, but that's the stuff he did that never really got publicized, that he really didn't, and so
no, and that's like, those are the stories that we love to tell as well. Is it let's see, someone else had inspired Jay said great job on the Lee post-war. Then John said, especially since I pronounce it gentile, I can't even pronounce it. Caleb mentions he's got a book about Lee after the war. He's going to find the title and share it. And Caleb's actually out looking for books today. So if anyone has any suggestions, Miranda mentioned she loves Reconstruction era stuff. Heather Cox Richardson and Carrie Janey have some great stuff.
And the Cox, good Boston girl, Miranda.
Janey's here. And then David mentions that the Barnes and Noble, the Civil War section there was huge in Atlanta.
Oh, I bet it was, but no, that's pretty cool about that. And, Caleb, thanks for the good words. Caleb's been a big supporter of podcasts on social media. We appreciate that. And a voice of reason sometimes, and reasonable world. We appreciate that. But no, so Reconstruction it's either you like it because it's like, it's the politics. It's not, there's not the battles. It's not that type of thing. So it's a different type of studying. But if you're going to do that full 360-degree view of it, you have to look at it. And when we talk about Booth and we talk about the assassination, you really see the impact of what he did up until for a while. I mean, all through, you can still, honestly, you still feel it today. You still can.
Oh, big time. It's still like, it's the impact of that one event is like, it just sent ripples throughout, I think, probably for hundreds of years. And, the one thing, and I've mentioned it before, is the letter that Howard's wife wrote to him. It was a day after the assassination, and she was talking about how much she was fearing for the country with Johnson being president, and then Howard wrote a letter to his wife after he'd found out, and he said, here in the South, they don't realize they've lost a friend in Abraham Lincoln. They've lost somebody that would have brought this country back together. And he said, now it's going to be a struggle. And he knew that.
Publicly bashed the assassination. He feared was going to be repercussions on the South. A lot of things like that. And that was you could sort of put yourself in that time right after the war. Just realize what a complete mess it was. I mean, complete. The phrase Reconstruction is kind of it's kind of a plasticky type of word, but so much of that Southern wealth was just gone. It was not just the slaves, but also the having to rebuild the infrastructure again. I mean, one of the things Gordon was a big proponent of when he was Senate was trying to kind of restart trade again between the North and the South. That's how bad things were for a while. Having Northern Democrats in Congress constantly ripping on the South and calling the South a land of murderers and traitors and killers, and like all the stuff you hear even today in politics when people bash certain cities and places like that.
Mhm.
They, as you're trying to paint this picture of this animalistic type of
Yep.
society that that they that by our good graces we're going to allow you back under our certain rules,
Yeah.
and we're going to dictate your elections with a bayonet with military districts.
Yeah.
It's a scary time, and things obviously did get better, but certainly Grant gets hit a lot on his presidential
Yep.
nation because a lot of the stuff was going on under his watch, and there was some
Mhm.
stuff with favors and stuff like that.
Big time. Grant's cabinet. I remember it was funny, like one of my professors, my management professor, when we were doing our unit on leadership, she talked about Grant a lot, and she and I had some really great conversations about him. And she said he was, he helped win the war. Obviously, he's a great general, but she said when it came to being president, terrible, just because he had so many corrupt people.
I mean, there aren't too many presidents who were generals who really were good presidents.
No,
I mean,
I think Garfield would have been.
Garfield probably would have been, but look, the ones who were. I mean, Grant. It doesn't make you any better.
Mhm.
But all this stuff. But Lee did what he did. I mean, he was a traitor by definition because
but absolutely he was. Yep.
But again, you have to kind of look past that top level and look at the whole.
Yeah.
That that's what's important. You do it for the northern guys too. I mean, you can look at.
Yep. And Jim said the same thing. You take him off his pedestal, and did he commit treason? Yes, he did. And Jim said, on the other hand, when the war was over, he was magnanimous and put down the arms instead of turning into guerrilla warfare. Miranda said that she loved the Lee episode. Thank you, Miranda. I think people forget all that he did pre-war and especially post-war, and just focus on the 4 years in his long life. That's true. And that's what the same thing can be said for Abraham Lincoln. We look at just those 4 years. And I mean, obviously they're the last 4 years of his life, but nobody looks at what he did before and some of the shit that went on with him. That, he wasn't always a nice guy. And he wasn't Lincoln.
Oh, Lincoln.
That we just judge him based on those 4 years, and we don't look at, Lincoln.
He's got a great PR department for the last 100+ years, because you think of you think of very unpopular presidents. And he was one.
Mm-hmm.
He was one. I mean, there was you think about some of the what would have Lincoln's reputation been if he lost that 1864 election?
Oh, right?
Yeah. Does he go into exile somewhere? Does he disappear? I don't know. But I'll tell you right now, he's now looked upon. I'm not wearing a t-shirt if that's the case, right?
Yep.
But again, we talk comparing with the Lee thing is you've got the people who look at Lincoln as a god.
He does no wrong, and I think, and I mean, I admittedly, I fell into that camp at one time where I really thought he was like, this really great person. But then I start looking more at him.
You got the people who look at him as a dictator and all this stuff too, and that is more of what the contemporaries at the time thought.
Yeah,
because what he did suspend habeas corpus. He did jail Maryland, politicians so they couldn't vote to secede. So it's a little bit of both, and Lincoln still has to make. The Lincoln people still have to put their hands around the Indian executions, which they. Right? And there's that too, but again, that doesn't make him some horrible dude either. It
doesn't. It doesn't, and that's the thing. Is like it's like when the thing is when you study a historical figure and they're your favorite one to study, is you can't fall into this camp of they did no wrong. I mean, like everybody knows on here, Oliver Otis Howard is my favorite Civil War general, but he does screw up. He's not obviously not perfect. And you know what? Grant's not perfect. And Lincoln certainly isn't either. Lincoln was kind of an asshole at times.
No, and the whole reason I brought this whole long diatribe thing up was you can't sit there on one hand and say Lee is great, Lincoln sucks, or vice versa, because it's just you have to look at things, and there's way too much of that, especially on social. It's just that's the thing is every one of these dudes, they have they have things about them that are really, really good, and things about them that they
Yep.
probably aren't going to be in their biographies.
Yep.
Have to look at sometimes you have to look at the ugly part of history,
Yep.
and you those deep, dark corners to find out the scoop on a lot of these things.
Yep.
And you'll find that some of the people that you think are demons aren't as bad, and some of the people you think are gods aren't, their halos.
They're not. Yeah, exactly. And like Miranda mentions, Lincoln was racist. He absolutely was. He was not. And I really liked how this, like, that one series that was on a few years ago about Lincoln, where they said he's not the great emancipator. And I see that now. Like, that was something that was given to him after, but emancipation was political. Lincoln was not an abolitionist. There was, that's the thing too, is in the North, the Civil War generals, like you take John Reynolds, for instance, he was not for emancipation. Neither was McClellan at the time. And it's funny, McClellan gets hit for that and Reynolds never does. And I think that's another unfair thing about history too, is how McClellan gets hit for all this shit because of like the stuff he said about Lincoln. Well, Lincoln was saying the same shit about people, but then people will say, oh, it was his sense of humor. It's like, okay, that's, but like, I think there were a few Union generals who were abolitionists. And yes, I do believe, after, what I've read about Howard and some of his letters and stuff, I do think Howard was an abolitionist.
There's different, I mean, there's the Lord Garrison types, there's the Harry Beecher Stowe types, there's those Boston abolitionists, who they're so far on one side politically that the moderates look down upon them. And it's funny, I'm just looking at these, I finally figure out how to get in the comments, Mary, and Jim talks about that book, America's Original Sin, which I would highly suggest reading if you ever read that one. If you he tells it the way it is on a lot of different things, and he kind of throws some light on Lincoln about how his attitude is, frankly. But it's a really good book. It's really about white supremacy in that era. But guys like John Wilkes Booth saw these far fringe abolitionist people as a threat. Everything. And in Lincoln, it was dangerous politically to get too close to these guys too, because think of like today's politics, one way or the other.
Oh yeah, it's dangerous to get close.
And so it's tough if you're trying to win an election or be a politician. It's tough to really embrace one far side of it. That was kind of Lincoln's dilemma with this. Now he did push for the 13th Amendment. He did. So he definitely had that moment where he realized that obviously the Emancipation Proclamation was like Michael Scott declaring bankruptcy. It didn't do anything except as far as freeing slaves. It allowed them to put blacks in the military, which really helped. But it wasn't what he cast a wand, everybody was free. So there's that, but he did come around on it. He specifically, the 13th Amendment, which led to the 14th, which led to citizenship and things like that. Those three Civil War amendments. So, but certainly but again, it's also natural for the time that they were in. It wasn't like he would be considered today a hardcore psychotic racist, right? But back then that was more centrist, because that's just the way it was. And it's a different world. And
it is.
If you're going to judge people by 21st century standards, then you're going to be in trouble, because everyone's going to. That's just the way it was.
Exactly. And then like Tony says, people in general are too polarized on their likes and dislikes and make things hard to find common ground and get fair treatment for people being discussed. David said Lincoln was also pretty terrible to marry. I do agree with that. At the same time, she struggled with a lot of things that today she would be able to take medication for, it, like bipolar disorder, but that made her also very difficult to live with too. And then Gentile mentions like Lincoln changed the narrative of the war with his actions, and that's why he gets credit, which rightfully so. And then they're talking about the kind of the emancipation, and there's so much that goes on with it. But I do think, yes, Lincoln was a racist. A lot of them were back then. Like Oliver Otis Howard had to hide his feelings on African Americans at West Point because he got beat up once when he voiced his opinion.
Yeah,
And
you guys.
he never spoke of it after that.
You know who the first guy to visit him in the hospital was?
General Lee.
Robert E. Lee. How about
Yep.
that?
Yep. And Howard writes about it as an accident in the gymnasium.
Mhm.
But after that accident, he writes about how one guy he had been very good friends with, which was a Southerner,
Mhm.
they stopped talking. And they said, the guy was like, I can't talk to you anymore because of this is your view on this subject. And Howard was just like, and that's what the other thing that told me he was an abolitionist too, is he had such strong views that he's getting beat up over it. And he realized that he had to keep quiet over it.
No. But yeah, but it's interesting to study all these people. When you study them as people and not demagogues, you get a much better view of it. And it's okay. It's okay to sit there and say, I don't think Lee walked on water. I don't think Lincoln walked. It's okay to do that. Think what you want to think, but at the same time, you have to be open to it. And sometimes it's a good idea to read about the people you don't like.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Like I don't like Phil Sheridan. I read a biography about him though.
Sheridan.
And it's funny, like we had this comment on YouTube where someone was like, why do you like AP Hill? It's like, well, don't necessarily like him, but I enjoy studying him.
Yeah.
There's a difference there. Caleb said Howard and Lee had a mutual bond in their faith too. They're both religious guys.
I think Howard was a lot more religious than
Lee
he
was. Howard was like, I read somewhere, I think he was Presbyterian.
I'm not sure. You would know that.
Or something. But it was like he found religion in Florida.
Yeah. And Lee would, one of the first things he did, and when he went to Washington College, was he was going to the chapel because he knew that if he went, the students would go because he wanted them to all that. Mm-hmm. And it's ironic that the end of his life, what kind of doomed him is he was sick and he went to that meeting.
Mm-hmm.
The raise for who? William Pendleton, his old artillery, was on the pastor at the church and the school. And Pendleton is a guy who presided at his funeral. And so he was somebody who definitely, there's that story we talked about too, where he was in Norfolk, Virginia. He was coming back with his Savannah trip. He stumbled into a church and people were just stunned because it was it's Robert E. Lee in the church. And does that quote where the woman says, I've heard of God, but here is Robert E. Lee. So that, it's just to show his personality. But yeah, he certainly was. But Howard, he found religion. That's seminal. Mm-hmm. He wasn't a Sunday school kid. He found it. And to his we guys like Joseph Hooker bashed him all the time for it.
Yep. Old prayer book.
And his soldiers bashed him for it. There's that story we talked about before where Howard's telling his men, I forget what battle it was, to be honest, but it might have been Ezra actually.
Yeah, Ezra.
He's telling his men, don't worry, because if you're killed, you'll go to heaven.
Yeah.
And his men, well, I'd rather you protect me now. I'd like to live, not for nothing. So worry my physical body, not just my spiritual body. Thank you very much. And so that's a tough thing too. But again, as the further you get away from these people being alive, and the more books are written about them, the more skewed they are. And the danger is always either reading about only the people that you like, or finding one book, reading it, and stopping and move on to the next person, and having that be cast. That had to be, and we see that a lot with your boy.
Big time. Yeah, big time. Yeah, for sure. Oh, there's some good comments here. Lisa, hi Lisa. Anyone read Alan Guelzel's Lee: A Life?
I'm not the biggest Guelzel guy. I have the book here, but that's it's a good book. I think for the most part he's very skewed like a lot of the people are.
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
Oh, I'm back. Oh wait. Oh, just you on there. No, I'm back.
Well, lucky everybody. But no, I've not read that book. I don't think maybe I have read that book. I've read I think there's a lot of stuff written on these people. Personally, I want to see more books.
I think Guelzo's too biased, like especially with Mead. I think.
No, I'm not like I said, I'm not the biggest, like I said, I'm not the biggest Guelzo guy. I'm not a huge fan of
No.
his. I'm not a big Steve Sears guy either. To be honest, I'm not.
No.
No. I mean, because you want to talk about someone who's completely biased is Steven Sears. It's not even close. But I think Guelzo's book on Gettysburg kind of takes a warm beer piss all over George Meade unnecessarily.
Yeah. Oh, big time it does.
Strange. I think I have read that book, Lisa. I have it. I don't remember. There's a handful of Lee books that I've gone into, but it's if anybody has an opinion on the book, feel free to jump.
The thing I don't like about Sears is, you can criticize somebody, but when all you do is criticize them, that really makes it tough for me to enjoy the book. And I'm not just saying that because it's Howard he's criticizing. Like his
treatment of McClellan in the Antietam campaign is really bad, because you're going to take and the whole myth of Lost Order 191 that comes from Stephen Sears. It really does, where he takes one source, which is Nathan Kimball, and that source has been debunked right after the war. I mean, almost immediately, but he uses it to justify that he had these orders for all these hours, sat and did nothing with them, when it's been kind of debunked. But that's historical memory of it. I mean,
it turns in, and the thing with Howard is like, I mean, the thing I say about Sears is he blames Howard for everything, including the extinction of the dinosaurs. He, on one hand, he's criticizing Howard and McClellan very critically, like just almost, it's like it takes away from enjoying it. Reynolds does no wrong, and I love John Reynolds, but like when you take it to the point of hero worship, and I mean, I respect Sears, his books have their place in history, especially his Antietam book, but you have to look at his sources. Caleb asked, I think Caleb had wanted to know, but about books about Howard, but any books about Howard, like start with his memoirs.
Mm-hmm.
That's where to start with Howard, because the most recent biography was written, I think, in the 1940s, and it's called Sword and Olive Branch, and there hasn't been an updated bio since. Well, at least, I mean, I do plan on writing about Howard's life someday with you.
That'd be cool.
For a book. I do want an updated biography. But it's and Guelzo, like MJ said she doesn't like Guelzo. Caleb said that the Lee book was one of the best books Guelzo's written.
No, I'm pretty sure I've read that, but I guess there's a lot. The book that The Man Who Would Not Be Washington was a really good book.
And actually, my friend Brandon Marie Miller, she's an author, and she writes like kind of like young adult books, but she wrote a biography about Lee, and it is excellent. I loved it.
I mean, I've read all the Sothal Freeman stuff, and that's he's so far. He's one of those guys all about the subject, which just happens. But no, I mean, there's a lot of that stuff. There's a lot of the Harold Holzers of the world who write on guys like Lincoln. He's done stuff on the assassination too. There's a lot of different kind of themes out there. Earl J. Hess is another one. He's written a lot of books too. But again, it depends on how it is.
Yeah, Hess's books are, and I've talked about them on here before. Hess's books they're great because he tells in such detail, but without being too long-winded. But, I really agree with what he says about Hood taking over Army of Tennessee. It never should have happened. Hood was working behind the scenes. And Hood is another one of these figures that, there's this thing where people don't want to blame him. But, we were talking with our friend Eric after our book club meeting the other night. We were talking about John Bell Hood came up, and we're like, how could you not blame him? How could you just blame somebody like Frank Cheatham?
That was fun.
Or Ben Cheatham, right? Is it Ben or Frank Cheatham?
It is Ben, but I think it was Frank.
Ben. Oh, okay.
So it was both. It was fun, the book club with Eric the other night. And everyone jumped off. We hung on them for a little while. We should have kept people on, because that was the best part about it. I thought.
I know, just casually talking with Eric about stuff, and
It's pretty
You
funny.
know, he's a
Um,
great guy. David Ugg Hood.
no,
Yeah.
but you know what? The Hood's another one. I mean, you can look at all different sides of Hood, but you don't want to be clouded or um, mysticized by certain people. And Hood is great division commander,
Yeah.
great, but sometimes they just when you take the big chair, sometimes it just like I said before,
Yep.
the best players don't always make the best coaches.
Mm-mm.
So and he's certainly one that can prove that too. And again, with history being our benefactor, the 2020
Yep.
hindsight, it's clear that his plan to go into Franklin and Nashville was flawed.
Yep.
But I still think that was per the directive of Jeff Davis, though, and not so much. I can't imagine him deciding on his own. This is what I'm going to do with Sherman, kind of doing his thing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Caleb mentions he was at Cheatham's grave not long ago.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see Cheatham Hill here pretty soon at Kennesaw.
Yep.
Once
Yep.
we head so.
Yep. Oh, Patrick says right on about Sears and Guelzo, close-minded. At least Leas, I like Dennis Fry, who is not afraid to say maybe I was looking at something the wrong way. Yeah, and David said Hood should have stayed division commander and his legacy would be way different. Yeah, and I think, and it's funny I find more when we bring up Pat Claiborne, people say, I love to study him. And that's what Eric had said the other night too. And actually, I got to go back and have a look at it, but that Pat Claiborne book he got me, I'm pretty sure Pat Claiborne had a horse named Stonewall.
Yeah,
That is hilarious.
well, it makes you wonder some of these things,
Yep.
how that is. But yeah, some of these guys, and I remember, years ago and starting this stuff, kind of beginning with this whole thing that your blood then takes you over from the inside, the Civil War stuff.
Yeah.
Thinking, oh, okay, so this guy's bad, and then you read another book and say, wait a second, this guy's saying the exact opposite about the same guy. It's just common sense, but the problem is not everybody studies this stuff like people here do. And so you'll read the occasional book, or you'll go to the occasional battlefield and you'll come away with it. But you got to be open-minded, and you got to be able to have your minds change, and you have to be able to think that maybe
exactly. Yeah.
Oh, but guys like Sears don't. Sears went into that Antietam book with the narrative where he knew how he wanted to write it, and he clearly had the agenda against McClellan. He did.
Big time. Yeah.
That's not, and he's certainly not the only one.
No.
But that book, and I like the book, Landscape Turn Red. I like it, but the whole book is kind of, it's all geared towards specifically against him.
Yeah.
And the Guelzo does the same thing with the book, Gettysburg book against Meade. And that's okay. If that's what you believe, okay, fine. That's why Kent Masterson Brown and Guelzo need to be in a steel cage match someday.
Oh, I know. And they're friends, which is the funny thing.
Talk about an RKO situation for MJ.
Yeah. David said, if Hood doesn't go to Richmond and schmooze Davis, Franklin never happens.
Well, that's realistically, but does after Atlanta fell, Nashville would have been a target to try to get, thinking, well, if that is the supplies, we can go take over Nashville and capture the Confederate capital again. And is that going to hurt is that going to stall the Union going east? Yeah. If that was the plan, it was flawed, but they would have known that Sherman was going to live off the land. I mean, they weren't. Yeah. I mean, they could, if they started the Meridian campaign, maybe they could see, well, maybe he is going to, but Meridian's it's a lot closer to Vicksburg than Atlanta is to Savannah. So I don't know. I mean, I guess we're doing it right now. We say not to do is use a 2020 hindsight as a benefactor, right? Yeah. And that's the flaw in this. It always is you assume that this guy Hood was dumb because you went to Franklin, but he's right. That is right when you look at the big picture. But at the time, they didn't know. They know that was going. So
no. I just Franklin was just, and we talked about this with Eric the other night. Franklin was just such a waste. Like all those men, and for what? And then you pack your bags and you go on to Nashville. Like holy shit! Like Army of Tennessee was completely broken after that. And Gentili said Sears books are important works, but he does say some stuff.
They're great with X's and the O's. His book on Gettysburg is really good, as far as the understanding the campaign and things like that. But again, he seems to find a villain, and the Gettysburg
Yep.
is Howard. He clearly
Oh,
is.
he
But
doesn't like Howard in Tatum either.
no,
And
and that,
he go, and the thing is like, and Howard at Gettysburg is something you want to get the Gettysburg people going, holy shit. Like, they're like, he sucked and Hancock was God. And I mean, Hancock is great. I respect the hell out of Hancock, and he does help a lot at Gettysburg, and he and Howard really rallied them together at that field. But when they were like, he sucked at commanding the 11th Corps at Gettysburg, it's like, he wasn't in command of the 11th Corps at Gettysburg once Reynolds was dead.
no, and it's funny how people, you mentioned Hancock and him, they kind of create this fabricated type of animosity.
Yeah.
And I think if people could go back in the way back machine and turn back time,
Yeah.
right?
If I could turn back to...
I want you to do that. But if you could go back and look at and be at the meeting when they showed up, when Hancock's,
Yeah.
I have seniority, Hancock's, I have orders, he would have been like, okay, and that'd have been, that's
Yeah.
it, that's the thing. And there's the rumors the statues don't face each other because it's a lot of it is urban myth, and it's fun to talk
Yeah.
about. But I think the reality is there was not really a lot of hatred there.
No.
There wasn't this mutual loving society between Hancock and Armistead. There was a lot of things that, as time goes on, become more factual because of the stuff being told about him. But
it's the historical memory again that, and you have to kind of dig to peel back. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion, right? It's the same with, and some of these things that, you hear people say, it's like, well, like, why do you think that way? And, people have said like, well, what did Howard do after Gettysburg anyway? And it's like, well, Howard had an amazing career. He kept getting better, and I think like, Jim, my ears are bleeding. God, because I sang. But I think, like, any of them, Howard, Rosecrans, they all deserve this closer look because they did do some amazing things. Now, Rosecrans, it was the beginning of the war, Howard, it's the end of the war. And the Freedmen's Bureau was not like Freedmen's Bureau, he couldn't get done what he wanted to do.
no, the politics and the post-war stuff is not the sexiest things to talk about.
No.
But yeah, I'm glad. But going back to this again, I'm glad we did the Lee thing because I thought that I thought it was good to do. It's kind of stepping out of the before, but I think I'm glad people liked it because it was. Anytime you're going to do a podcast episode on a guy like Lee, you're gonna hear from somebody. But you try to play it fair. You try to call balls and strikes the way you see them. Yeah. And you just don't go into it with the agenda. You read it and you talk. Exactly. Even handed, that's all you can do.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. Hey, Jacob. And MJ said, I've never found anything where there was drama between Hancock and Howard. Yeah, my camera kind of went off there again. My laptop's being kind of funny this morning. I didn't leave though.
Oh yeah, well, it's okay. But yeah, but that's the thing. And it's funny because people tend to, it's funny sometimes because people root for these generals, these people like their sports teams, and they get something.
And they get bent out of shape if you if you say something good about Rosecrans, somehow you're saying something bad about Grant, or if you or if you like Howard, somehow it's like, why do you like him? Like, why would you study him? Like he was a complete shit show. It's like, well,
yeah.
Like,
no, it's fun. It's fun to talk about though, because certainly it's you try to be a little bit even with these things, but it is. I mean, personally, I don't have a favorite general or like you do anyway. I like them all and I hate them all for different reasons.
Same. And some of the ones I hate, I still love to study, like Sheridan. I still enjoy studying him. And
I'm not a big Sheridan guy either, but his his Cedar Creek study is really, really good. Again, Stones River today, the anniversary, he was obviously great. It's Stones River as well. And you can appreciate, you can look on the other side too, and you can appreciate the military work of a guy like a Gordon.
Yeah.
Without suddenly, embracing everything that he believes.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that you embrace everything he believes in. It doesn't mean that you're suddenly like, whatever, right? It means you just enjoy studying him, I think he and Pat Claiborne are the two best the South had.
Yeah. No, I mean,
and yeah, I'm gonna say it. I know there's some Stonewall fans on here. Gordon is way better than Stonewall.
Yeah. No, but
hey Bjorn.
Hey, look at Bjorn. Look at him go, huh?
Yep. Yeah, Bjorn can recommend some books. That's for sure.
Found his way over here to the YouTube world.
Yeah. Nice. And Caleb said, believe me, if I ever saw any sort of anti-Lee intentional disrespect and hate from you guys, I wouldn't be here. Thanks for being fair and balanced. Well, thank you.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, you can't
study this. Like, I mean, I enjoy studying both sides because there was two sides. Pat Claiborne, I study him because I don't just like him as a general, but I think he was a pretty decent human as well.
If you the more you study this, the more impossible it is to be polarized on one side, because you realize that it all blends in, it all mixes. Mm-hmm. It comes a point when you got to realize there are two teams on the field here, and you can't study one without the other. And I've got my beliefs on certain things, as does everybody else. But again, you can't just, if you're kind of a sophomore type of person, you're gonna have an unblinding hate towards somebody without really studying into them. If you still study into them and you still don't like them, well, then that's nothing wrong with that. But but that's how that goes, I'm not sure if Mary's still on. Are you still on?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay, because you disappeared again for a while. I thought it was just me. I thought I was finally going to get a chance to take over. But that's that's how it is. But no, you study both sides, and that's the whole thing about it. And so when you study both sides, sometimes you get a reputation of being too, on the fence or something like that. But have your beliefs, but don't be. You just can't be close-minded. That's all.
Hang on.
What are you doing?
I'm still here. I had to check something on my phone. I thought someone was calling me.
Okay, well, I'm glad you could join us.
Fucker. Jacob said, I have blind hate for Breckenridge. MJ said, can't be a balanced historian without only knowing one side.
Well, you can still have your own opinion. You can still like and hate guys. But I'm saying is the more you study them, the more you kind of realize that it's not all good or all bad. That's a common theme through all this stuff. And it's when you read enough of it, you can really see through some of the authors. Their agenda. And there are some in the Civil War world whose agendas are capital A. I mean, there just are.
Yeah, like Sears has an agenda. And again, we're not bashing Sears, but he's one where if the only book you read about Antietam is his, you're going to have a very different view. But the thing is too, it's like, so Sears writes this book on Antietam.
Right.
And he has this opinion on McClellan in his Order 191. And from there, so many authors after that take that opinion and they just go, well, Sears wrote it and he's great. And that's what happens. And that's like, you have the same with Howard. You have one person that says something bad about Howard. And again, I am starting to wonder if the way we feel about Howard is partly because of Stephen Sears.
Well, maybe, possibly. I mean, if somebody writes a book on whoever, and it's kind of a hatchet job on them, and that becomes a historical narrative, of course, we've seen them all with that. You see people go on hard about McClellan, right?
Yep.
You see about a lot of that he did to himself, but it goes with the other side too.
Yeah.
I mean, Stonewall, we talk a lot about him, and you talk about Stonewall Jackson, you automatically think of Bull Run, you think of the Valley Campaign.
Yeah, like all the stuff he did that was good, but at the same time, Jackson also is cut down early, and that is partly why he's got the kind of this almost, I don't want to say godlike status, but just this kind of status where he's very revered and you can't say anything bad about him. David said Jackson wasn't too hot during the 7 days.
No, 7 days he was not good. He was not good at Kernstown.
No.
Now the good versus outweighs the bad. His Chancellorsville flank was brilliant. It just was.
Yeah.
But if you go to parts of Virginia, you talk about 7 days, talk about Kernstown. hear it, and that's fine. Okay, fine, but that's kind of how it is. You have to kind of look at both, and you have to sometimes you have to begrudgingly agree that maybe you were wrong about something. I mean, the more you sit there are things that you think you just that you've ingrained in your head about certain things
Yeah.
for. Then you read more and you go, shit, maybe I wasn't right about that. But instead of kind of, oh, that guy's an idiot, I'm not going to waste my time reading him.
Yep.
You should read a little bit more, and sometimes your opinion could actually change, man. Actually,
Yep, it can, and it's okay if it does.
you know.
Jim mentions, like, with his blog, I am trying very hard to cover both sides, every angle I can find: north, south, east, west, male, female, soldiers, civilians, white, black. Yeah, Jim does an excellent blog, and he's on Twitter with it.
But he does very, very well. There's
Yep.
a lot. There's a lot of good stuff. Even we rip on Twitter. There's because people people are people, but there are some good people who just the Twitter historian world who just they
Yep.
write on
like Civil War on this day is one.
That's their vehicle to do it.
Yeah.
But look, they're also the ones who are so crazy on one side, crazy one side Confederate that you can't talk. But again, that's just the way people are.
Yeah.
But it is fun though. It is fun to study. Go through it. But kind of coming to that quiet period now as far as battles go. I mean, Stone River is today.
Yeah.
And if anybody who hasn't checked out that battle, Murfreesboro, definitely check it out because it's fascinating. I mean,
it's very fascinating study.
It's a big. I mean, Union had about 45,000 guys in this battle. We're not talking about a little milk run here. You're talking about a lot of the big names, guys like Thomas and people like that. Braxton Bragg, Leonidas Polk is there. Hardee is there. The great Joseph Wheeler, the war child, Mary.
Yeah, the war child. Yep.
Doesn't have the greatest day at Stones River, he doesn't, but there's a lot of people. So you talk about 75, 80 total thousand men in this cold camp, and then ends up being a pretty good battle, which ultimately has that trickle down effect.
Yep, it does.
Which leads to, like I said a little while ago, to Tullahoma, and then eventually to Atlanta, Chickamauga, all those things where Stones River kind of that lymph node that it happens, and then it kind of goes from there. And that's one of those battles that people need to study a lot more.
Oh, big time. Yeah.
I don't mean people here. I mean so much just in general. There's a lot of a lot of great talk about the big, but it's like, George Thomas was the Stones River. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, and things like that, or Leonidas Polk or Breckinridge. Not
Jacob's favorite.
Not Breckinridge's greatest day either. So Jacob will like that. But it sets up the bigger things, and we've said this a million times. Every big battle, Gettysburg, Antietam, they all have those little rumbles, those tremors lead to the big eruption.
Yeah, like Winchester, and then there's something like Monocacy.
Without those going certain ways, if Second Winchester doesn't go the way it goes, if Ewell doesn't rout Robert Elroy, who knows if Gettysburg happens, because they needed that supply base at Winchester to go and supply run, which was the Gettysburg campaign. And so without that, it probably doesn't happen. And so you study these and you realize how important they are. And then the big battles make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
When you
absolutely.
Get Stones River is mandatory.
Oh, it is. It is. Yeah. And try and read something about George Meade today too, because it's his birthday. He was born in Cadiz, Spain.
That's right.
It's pretty cool. Or Cadiz, I'm probably saying it wrong, but Gentilly, the Battle of Dry January begins tomorrow.
Oh, we're not doing that, right? We're doing February.
February, dry February. Yep.
But we're supposed to go to Gettysburg in February, aren't we? Well, we got to get a dispensation for a weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
We're going to call it.
Tony said there's also discovery in the future that can swing the view and things. All books are snapshots. That's absolutely true.
Well, books are snapshots, but books are a glimpse into the author's perception.
Yep. How they are perceiving the events, how they are reading between the lines, how they're interpreting the historical materials, and how they're utilizing them.
Oh, absolutely.
Bjorn mentions William Bickham's History of the Battle and Rosecrans talk about having a bit of bias.
Yeah, and we would talk about Bjorn, about Grant, about his opinion of Stones River too, about how it wasn't even a battle. So, and you can take that source and you can make that into a lot of nothing.
Yeah.
But what it does disservice to the soldiers who fought there and does disservice to the actual battle. I don't
Yeah.
know too many battles of 75,000 people that can kind of be thrown away as not even a battle, considering the number who actually fought there and the people who died there.
Oh yeah, discredit. It's kind of disrespectful to those that fought there, right?
But you can see what's good about Stones River too is you can sort of see the politics working behind Bragg.
Yeah.
At the time now, Breckinridge, Polk, Hardee, Claiborne, all the big boys were there.
Yeah, they're starting to work behind the scenes against him.
Right, and so the seeds are sown for what's going to happen with Tullahoma, with Chickamauga, eventually Chattanooga, going all the way out towards Ringgold, and finally ending with Bragg. You can see how everything kind of falls apart. Think of a car that's driving, falling apart as it's driving.
That's that's exactly what it is.
So, the Army of Tennessee, it's just people talk a lot about the Army of Northern Virginia.
Yeah,
but I don't know if there was an army that was beaten up more than the Army of Tennessee.
Army of Tennessee was beaten up pretty bad. And I think it's Larry J. Daniel, and I think there's a few other people on here that have read that book. Is an excellent study on the Army of Tennessee.
I don't know the casualty number. I'm sure it's in one of these books somewhere, but there's 22 Confederate armies operating in the American Civil War. 16 Union ones. I bet you out of the 22 Confederate armies, I bet you the Army of Tennessee had the most carnage. I bet you.
I think it did.
If Army of Northern Virginia had more, it's because they had more men. But I bet you, as far as casualties, like per man type thing, like percentage, I bet you they did. I'll have to look that up afterwards and see. But that's a I mean, you look at what these guys went through. I always think that miserable snow march back from Nashville, what that must have been.
And David mentions the title of the book is called Conquered by Larry Daniel. It's very good.
Because after Gettysburg, Robert E. Lee men, they were walking back. Yes, one, rainy, but it wasn't freezing. And two, they knew because they had a little supplies, they were going to live to fight another day. Yeah, those guys heading back, those Mississippi guys, those Tennessee guys, they knew it was over. So they're that's you want to talk about a walk of shame. They were done. And they had to walk with no supplies. A lot of them had no shoes, walking in the snow, also being chased down by Thomas.
Getting like their heels nipped and stuff. Yeah, that's God.
That's a shitty day. That's a bad
day.
It
is. Yep. Yep. We should probably get ready to wrap up here soon because we're going to do a shorter one today since it's New Year's Eve.
Oh, and someone needs to go back to sleep.
No, I don't. I'm also still trying to make dinner for us too.
Oh yeah. Today's our little Christmas day today.
Yep, it is. Yep.
But someone's finally back. We'll finish up here in a second, but so there's a lot of comparisons you can make. It certainly is, but a lot of good. What's great about this too is just looking at these comments, which are admittedly a lot easier to read than
they are. Yeah.
Is there's a lot of good books get talked about here.
Yeah.
And there's also
Bjorn's great for coming on and recommending books.
And he mentions Bickham's book, and so that their books to sort of quasi avoid if you don't have time to read a whole bunch of Stones River. So it's good. So we should get some kind of residuals from some of these books, Mary. We got so many books that people have bought because silly things they've said. Yep.
Ben said that he picked up the Man Who Would Not Be Washington on your recommendation. Patrick said thanks for doing this. So you're very welcome. We love coming on here and doing this. It's fun for us both, and we always learn something, and we appreciate all of you jumping on here with us and supporting. With the podcast is now going into its third year. We are we're going to record episode 98 next week and episode 99 after that, and then we are on to episode 100, which we still have to think of a topic for that.
That's pretty. Yeah, so Ben got that book. Ben, I think Ben's from Texas, I believe. I think he's from the Metroplex.
Yep.
So glad to hear that. I'm glad he got the book. That is a good book. It gives you a lot of insight to the Lee family. It's a connection between Mary Custis and George Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Talks about Light Horse Harry Lee. It talks a lot about the attitudes of George Washington, the importance of the Potomac, which leads to how important it was for Washington and all that. The city, I mean, not the person. And it really does a real good deep dive into the Lee family psychology.
Yep. I need to read it too.
Yeah, the Mount Vernon connection, the White House landing connection, all the stuff that the Union burned, and a lot of artifacts that were destroyed. Mm-hmm. And then it talks a lot. Obviously, talks a lot about the Mexico. Talks a lot about West Point, mostly Civil War, but the post stuff is really, really good. The stuff they had, people don't realize that, when the Union took over the Arlington House and put those 16,000 dead soldiers in there, they seized the property because Lee wasn't paying taxes, because they demanded you come in and pay your taxes.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to walk in there and get himself caught, but he ended up he basically had someone go in to try to pay the back taxes so we can keep the property, and the government wasn't happy. They wanted the land, and they finally got $150,000 back, the Lee family, afterwards. Lee, despite the fact that he was fighting a war, he was losing a lot of stuff, he still maintained a status and still maintained a lot of money in different places.
He did. Yeah.
So he was able to recover from that. But it's fascinating, his Washington Lee College stuff. His death is really described well in that book. There's a perception that he had the stroke and never talked again, but he actually did start to improve.
Yeah.
And then finally he took a nosedive and died. But it's interesting though. I definitely enjoy the book. Definitely,
Yeah, well, for sure. I need to read it as well. I've read a couple Lee biographies, but I need to read that one. But yeah. So yeah, for everybody who has jumped on with us today, thank you and Happy New Year. And book club on January 12th, which is Thursday, 7:00 Eastern. Once we get our email issues resolved, we will be sending out those emails.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, college football this weekend too.
Yep.
You're gonna see Michigan and you're gonna see Georgia win pretty easy, I think.
Yep, I think
it's
so.
Really too bad, digress football real quick, that Alabama didn't sneak in because it would have been great if you would have had Michigan, Ohio State, and Georgia, Alabama. It would have been the great college football. Georgia's going to win the whole damn thing. Spoiler, win the whole thing. So, but because they are by far the best team. But we'll see what happens. Hopefully, Ohio loses. But they
yeah. Someone was just wondering why we're not bashing the Buckeyes. But
they're Buckeyes. It's tough. Ryan Day's an old BC guy, so it's tough to rip on him too. All right, so I guess we're going to jump off then, huh?
Yep, I think so. Yeah, just do a shorter one today and let everyone go hang out and all that. But yeah, thanks for everybody for being on here. And John Gentili said Darren will be relieved to know Liverpool won yesterday.
Oh yes, you know what that means? They all got a pizza party after a big soccer game. All their moms took pizza.
God. But yeah, we will be doing a roundtable in January. We'll announce the date of that soon, and we have 2 episodes that we will be recording very soon as well. One about the New Year's resolutions of the generals, and the other will be about William Rosecrans. And we will be back here with everybody next Saturday morning.
No, we will. He reminds me of. I got to look up and see who won the World Cup. I never even.
Yep.
So I guess I'll have to look. I assume that's over by now. So anyway, so Jim mentioned In the House of the Dead, which is a fantastic.
Yep, that's our first book club, is In the Houses of Their Dead. Yeah,
it's gonna be so much fun. It's gonna be so much fun having Dr. Alford on to talk about that.
Yeah,
because I'm just gonna be sitting there, just
that'll be awesome.
That'll be a good one too. So, all right, well, let's jump off. So everybody cut this early. So everybody have a safe New Year's Eve, and always appreciate every single day, because tomorrow's promised to nobody. My friend Fritz in Texas, love you, brother.
Yeah, and to my mom.
Meet again.
Yeah. Anyway, everybody, Happy New Year, and we will be back with you all soon.